Olá, eu sou Katiuscia Sotomayor e este é o AgroAmérica, programa em parceria com o Instituto Interamericano de Cooperação para a Agricultura, o IICA, aqui no AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. A proposta é mostrar iniciativas inovadoras e compartilhar boas práticas dos 34 Estados-membros, que podem ser replicadas em todo o mundo na busca pelo desenvolvimento agrícola e pelo bem-estar rural. Hoje falamos sobre os benefícios do agroturismo para a sustentabilidade do Caribe, estratégias para fortalecer o setor e a importância para a segurança alimentar da região. Nossa convidada é Ena Harvey, especialista em agroturismo e representante do IICA em Barbados. I'm very glad you can join us today. Welcome.
Thank you, and hello, AgroMais and all the viewers.
Well, let's start talking about the challenges of the pandemic and economic recovery. The priority now is to improve the agri-food sector and the tourism, right? How can the linkages be strengthened?
The challenge of the pandemic is that Barbados, as well as all of the other Caribbean countries, are very dependent on the tourism sector. The Caribbean, in fact, is one of the most vulnerable regions in the entire world when it comes to tourism. Our tourism sector has a number of trickle-down effects right back to our agricultural sector. And the impact on our tourism sector has been significant. We have lost jobs, restaurants, hotels are closed, and all of the persons who normally supply food and food-related activities to our tourism sector no longer have that market. So what our Ministry of Agriculture has been doing since before COVID was to ramp up agricultural production and bring a number of acres into production, especially for small scale and short term fruits and vegetable crops and so on. And in fact, that exercise actually led to an increase in food production. However, there have been some market disturbances because not having the customers and because of the protocols with social distancing and closure of markets and so on, our farmers and our vendors have still found it difficult to sell all of their products. So those are some of the challenges. The challenges also relate to our women who produce food and who now have double duty to produce their food, to get access into their farms, and also now to school children at home and manage all of their non-farm activities within the COVID protocols and the new normal of moving around. So those are some of the challenges. But our government has been coping very well with the challenges. Our vaccinations are up. We have over 70,000 persons having had their first vaccination. We've had a number of second vaccinations also. So things are opening up. Our tourism sector is gradually opening up within safe protocols, both for cruise tourism and land-based tourism. So we're hoping that by next year, we will begin to see a return to normalcy. It's going to be slow. We expect startups, we expect closures, but we see maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully by next year. And those are some of the challenges we've been facing. We've had a number of COVID champions too, persons who have rallied, who have been innovative, not only in Barbados, but across the region, delivering food and so on.
You mentioned the market fluctuations, but can we say that we can count on the resilience of agri-food production, even though we know the COVID-19 is critical to global food security, right?
Absolutely. We can count on the resilience of our agri-food systems, and basic to that resilience is the resilience of the people of the Caribbean. Every year we are faced with the challenges related to climate change, hurricanes, droughts, and even more recently, volcanic eruptions that have caused ashfall here in Barbados that has really been strange for us. We've never had that. It's affected our tourism, our economy, and our lives, our daily lives. So our people are resilient. The agri-food sector is resilient. We face a number of challenges, but we are committed to overcoming those challenges and to becoming food secure, and not only food secure, but secure with respect to our nutrition and our health and wellness.
About the resilience, realize that the sector has the capacity to recover from the crisis much earlier than others. But is this enough? What are the possibilities to link the local farm to the hospitality sector, for example?
The possibilities have always been significant. When you look at the international data, across the Caribbean, we import a whole lot of food. And the next major expense after accommodation in terms of tourism expenditure is food and beverage. Granted, we cannot produce all of the food that is consumed or all of the processed foods that are required by the tourism industry, but we can certainly produce a lot of the fresh fruits and vegetables and root crops, as well as the horticultural products, the flowers and the landscaping and so on that are required in tourism investment. We have not had sufficient linkage between our agri-food sector and tourism, and there are challenges to be addressed on both sides. The challenge on the agricultural side is to produce sustainably, and now, especially with COVID, with traceability and compliance with our sanitary and phytosanitary measures, so that tourists are assured of healthy food which can be traced to source, healthy, authentic local food. And on the tourism side, tourism must realize that it's a partnership. They cannot rely on the old excuse that we will wait for the agricultural sector to get its house in order and then we will buy from them. It's a partnership that has to be developed over time and with trust and with resources shared to make that linkage happen between agriculture and tourism. And I may add, it's not only between agriculture and tourism. Those aren't the only ministries that relate to making this linkage happen. We have health, we have community development, and of course, very importantly, we have the environment, and we have finance and economic development that must allocate budget to make the linkage happen.
So we can understand it right. Is the promotion of agritourism different from the concept of rural tourism? And what about ecotourism? And do the countries in the region really depend on it and the three of them?
When IICA first started looking at linking the agricultural or the agri-food sector with tourism, we took it on a 360-degree context, looking at everything that's related to agri-food sector, linking with tourism products and services. What we have in the Caribbean is a pretty mature tourism product. And therefore, we concentrated on making the trade linkage more synergistic, having the hotels and the food service and even the gift shops and the souvenir sector more integrally linked with agricultural production. And then as we expanded further into the wider IICA context in Latin America, rural tourism, we saw, was flourishing in many Latin American countries. In fact, I visited Brazil some years ago, about 10 years ago, and spent 3 weeks visiting your rural tourism installations, and it was amazing. We have rural tourism installations across the entire Latin American continent. Looked at both the improvement of trade linkages between the established tourism plant with the agri-food sector, increasing the use of the indigenous foods and agricultural products in the tourism sector, as well as developing authentic sites, attractions, and events in the rural space where agriculture traditionally takes place. So it's not an either or that agro-tourism linkages do not relate to rural tourism. Then that is direct revenue generation in the rural space that does not rely on a middleman, and that is alternative revenue for a farm-based enterprise or a farm family. So we don't differentiate between the two to say that one is agro-tourism or agri-tourism or eco-tourism or community tourism. There are so many definitions. What we have and what we need is a link between our agri-food sector and our existing tourism sector with the aim of creating an authentic, people-based, community-based tourism that creates economic opportunities, jobs, and sustainable development for our people.
And what are the benefits of this kind of tourism, the agri-tourism, for sustainability and cultural heritage?
One of the main benefits, if we look at the trade side and the production of healthy local food and its utilization in our cuisine, is validation of our cultural patrimony as it relates to our foods, the nutrition benefit of our food, our use of our biodiversity, and the promotion of health and wellness. When you look at the Caribbean, and now it's all over the developing world, we have a tsunami of chronic non-communicable diseases. Persons are suffering from diabetes, hypertension, all sorts of cancers that are related to poor nutrition and poor lifestyles. And so when we promote the production of our local food and the utilization of those foods for our tourism markets and in food service and in catering, then we operate within a context of health and wellness and utilization of our food, eating what we grow and growing what we eat, and giving the tourists that authentic experience, which is the trend now. Tourists want something in addition to sun, sea, and sand when they come to the Caribbean. They want an authentic experience. They want a family-based experience, health, wellness, and they want to assuage their social consciousness. They want to know that they are giving something back to the community. And this is what's very important. And in the rural space, when you develop rural tourism, you bring that entire rural community into the modern world, but in a dignified way and in keeping their traditions and their indigenous knowledge intact. And I'm saying this because we need to have digital villages. If our rural villages and our rural communities are to engage in tourism, they have to have Wi-Fi. They have to be able to have bookings for the tourists and to know what is required of a tourism offering and to have access, physical infrastructure and access for persons to come in and to have a safe experience. They need to still take care of the environment. They need to know what happens to tourists if a hurricane is coming, if an earthquake happens. How do I evacuate safely? How do I deal with liability insurance? All of these things help to modernize our entire country, yet keeping our indigenous knowledge, our culture, and our heritage intact so that we provide an authentic experience within the context of an international world.
You highlighted the importance of food in this matter. Can you say that what are the strategies like accreditations that open up the culinary tourism for the market, investments in traditional recipes or in cultural aspects of the culinary, for example? And how does this connection affect the environment? Because we are talking about investing with technology, but we have the environment to take care of. How does it affect?
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that question because we're really doing some exciting things with respect to cuisine and defending our culinary heritage. What IICA is currently doing is establishing a Chefs for Development website because we realize that the food and beverage persons in a restaurant or a hotel or a catering establishment are the decision makers. And we want to promote chefs and culinary professionals and the good cooks and all the youth and the women in the communities as champions for food and nutrition security and for making very real that engine that pulls our local foods into the cuisine. So, what we're doing with the Chefs for Development website and network is gathering all of the chefs in the Caribbean, as well as in the Pacific and in Africa, because it's an ACP project, gathering them into a network and uploading information on our food culture, our food stories, the COVID champions, and how we can utilize our local food into cuisine that is Caribbean brand and nutritious and healthy and represents our wonderful multi-ethnic history and tradition. How does that affect the environment? If we produce our own local food, then our carbon footprint internationally is reduced. We're not importing food, we're saving food miles, and we are going from farm to table. So the tourists know where their food has come from, and we involve them in caring for the environment in which we create and produce that food. And environmentally, we ensure when we harvest our fish or any seafood or when we produce any crop, we produce it within an environment that enriches our soils and keeps our soils fertile. IICA has an entire project on soil health now because we realize our soils have been depleted. And we use methods and technologies that do not damage the environment. We use methods for reducing drought, for saving and managing our water, for reduced use of water so that in that management of water, we're not wasting water. And we're using natural fertilizers, natural chemicals. We're promoting apiculture so that we have two industries. We have the apiculture sector, which could produce a whole lot of value-added products, and we increase the pollination potential for so many of our fruits and vegetables. So it's an entire bioeconomy that IICA is looking to promote, not only in Barbados, but with all of the countries in the Caribbean and Latin America. So while we produce, we protect our environment, we produce our local foods, and we link with our tourism sector.
And of course, we would like you to share your key insights of farm-to-table experiences. What are the main benefits of the initiative? We know it reduces travel emissions, links with community. What makes the difference is the production system, right? How can it be improved?
Our farm-to-table system can be improved, first of all, by sensitization and sharing knowledge. What we have found many times is that even within the Caribbean, we're not aware of all of the fantastic farm-to-table activities that are going on in other countries of the Caribbean. Last month, I had a very interesting webinar hosted by the Caribbean Tourism Organization, the CTO, during which I shared the panel with a company called Stush in the Bush. Now, Stush in the Bush is a Jamaican company, and Stush represents a certain measure of sophistication with a little arrogance. But Stush in the Bush is a wonderful farm-to-table experience that has been developed by a couple, Lisa Binns and her husband, who have created an experience in the hills of Jamaica where they grow all of their own food, harvest their food, and they've created a menu and a dining experience that is intimate and that is healthy and different. We have farm-to-table experiences even with our chefs, and I refer to Jamaica again. Last week, I had a webinar with several chefs within our Chefs for Development initiative. And there is one chef, executive chef Jackie Tyson from Jamaica, who is doing COVID boxes. Her company, from thought to finish, is creating COVID boxes with a deconstructed 6-course gourmet meal, complete with notes on how to prepare the meal, plate the meal, and set the table. So we have farm to table experiences that are amazing. In Dominica, we have a chef who is Dominican and her husband, who is a French chef. They've been chefs for over 30 years, and they have their own organic farm, and they're producing everything that they use in their restaurant and producing some amazing cuisine. We have executive chefs from Suriname right up to Bahamas, who are utilizing the lionfish in an initiative called Eat to Deplete, because the lionfish is destroying our reefs, but it tastes very good from what I understand. And they are going not only farm to table, what I like to call boat to throat or farm to fork. So farm to table has a number of advantages in terms of utilizing our local foods, seafoods, our foods from land production into our cuisine. We produce healthy and amazingly authentic food with the help of our chefs and our culinary professionals. So we are building our human capacity. We're encouraging youth into the sector because we have a number of youth who want to be culinary professionals, who want to be certified with World Association of Chefs or certification institutes and have a career path. But we want to certify youths who can be champions for promoting our cuisine and our heritage and our culture. We have farm to table among our indigenous people, our Caribs in Dominica, our Saramacan women in Suriname, our Garifuna in Belize. There's a beautiful Garifuna experience, Garifuna, the native people. And therefore, farm to table varies right across the Caribbean. And the first thing we need to do is share those experiences and then let people say, well, I'm going to do this, that, or the other.
We can say it's a multi-layered initiative, right? The potential
Absolutely.
for gastronomical tourism in the country is an asset. And also you mentioned that you focus on women, indigenous groups, the youth, and small producers, farm families, right? Backyard
Yes.
gardening, for example, in communities around hotels. Does it have a great potential? What are other prospects?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is an initiative that is being taken up in more than one Caribbean country. I know that I read recently of the Jamaican Minister of Tourism actually working to have a project with communities around some of the big hotels on Jamaica's north coast and involving youth. Here in Barbados and across the region during COVID, IICA funded a special COVID fund under which we had over 12 countries initiating community gardens so that the community is fed and there was the potential for that community to link with tourists within that community. So it has tremendous potential. And many of our hotels, believe it or not, actually, as part of their certification in terms of their 5 diamond status and so on, have as a criterion for that eligibility linking with local communities and utilizing local food. So there is a built-in criterion for that eligibility and for making the linkage happen. And with COVID now, many of the people who have become unemployed, especially in our tourism sector, because the tourism sector employed a lot of women with families. Many of those women have now moved into doing agriculture in their home, backyard production, or even cooking food, preparing food, selling food, delivering food online using apps and so on. So this whole issue of backyard and community gardens has tremendous potential for linking into hotels within the community, within parishes, across villages, so that we create that that link which will give economic benefit, social benefit, and give the hotels that certification that they are doing sustainable tourism, and as well produce in our communities diversification of income, revenue earning, and sustainable livelihoods. It's a win-win.
Unfortunately, a win-win. Unfortunately,
A
our
win-win.
time is up, but we would like to know what is the role of the United Nations World Tourism Organization in strengthening the relationship between agricultural producers and the tourism sector in Barbados.
In 2019, at our IABA meeting, IICA signed an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with the UNWTO to promote agrotourism and rural tourism for economic development, generation of employment, and sustainable livelihoods. And IICA is working very closely with the UNWTO, which operates worldwide across a few hundred countries. And we are working with them in order to promote rural tourism, agrotourism trade, and with a special focus on rural gastronomy.
It was an honor. Thank you very much. Ena Harvey, especialista em agroturismo e representante do IICA em Barbados.
Thank you very much.
No AgroAmérica de hoje, nós falamos sobre agroturismo no Caribe. Você pode rever este programa no canal do AgroMais no YouTube e acompanhar também outras entrevistas por lá. Aproveite para seguir a gente nas redes sociais, @AgroMaisTV. Obrigada pela companhia. A gente se vê.